Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. Joined in our normal Sunday slot, Brian, special guest Jamal Johnson. Jamal, you are an agent with, is that
Empowered Sports Management.
There we go. Empowered Sports Management. So how long have you been an agent?
Yeah, so I got certified in 2023. So I guess going on 2 years this October. But it's definitely been something I've wanted to do. Kind of, there was a lot of background steps getting me to this place. So even though, I haven't been an agent for too long, I've been, doing all the things in the back end to make sure I'm ready for this position for I'd probably say the past 5-ish years. So since about 2019, 2020, I've been getting everything together to be ready for this role.
Nice. So I'm always curious what type of, let's say, education background took you to where you are now as an agent.
Yep. So I'm not gonna lie. So a bit of background on myself. So I also played a bit of ball. So I played at underground. I'm out of Toronto, so I went to University of Toronto. But if I'm being real, especially the first 2 years, I was there for football. I was not there to really do much school-wise. Obviously, grew up a little bit, got a little older. So probably my third year, I started thinking of, okay, what are the next steps? All that to say, in my undergrad, I did sociology and criminology. Nothing really agent-related, but through that, I definitely got an interest in law school and in the law. So I took a lot of criminal law courses and understood things from that way. But at the same time, like I said, I come from a playing background. I kind of knew I wanted to pivot and stay within sports, stay within football. So a bit of context into that. A lot of the guys that I played with, once they stopped playing, I kind of noticed like people were lost. They were almost a little bit depressed. They didn't know what the next steps were. I always say, football's one of those things, especially playing at the university collegiate level. You're putting in 40+ hour weeks. So once those hours are taken away, you've dedicated so much of your life, so much of your time to it. It's understandable that guys don't know what's next. They don't have a next step. But with me, I saw that with a bunch of guys that I was friends with, that I played with, and I was like, okay, how can I change this? What can I do to be different? And that's when I really started exploring different options. And I figured, okay, being an agent is really the next step for me. And that's my way to kind of give back, to support, and to continue to allow student athletes, young men, to have a platform. Like football is one of those things that it gives so much, but you also have to leverage that into the right things. Be creative with your interests, with your passions. The amount of doors that are open when you're playing at a high level. And I don't know if there's any young athletes listening right now, but listen to me when I say take advantage of every opportunity you get while you're playing, because the second you stop playing, unfortunately, those doors will close. But yeah, so kind of my third year, heading into my fourth year of university, I decided, okay, I'm going to apply to law school. So I applied there, did all of that, did my 3 years of law school for the NFLPA. So after your undergrad, it requires either in a law degree or your master's of some sort to get certified. So because I had some type of interest in law, I decided, okay, let me do law school. I know I want to be an agent, but if I decide that I want to continue, I want to pursue law, I will always have it. But knowing, the end goal is always to be certified to open my own agency, and kind of been doing that ever since I graduated law school.
Nice. Now, does the NFL require you to pass the bar or just graduate law school?
Just graduate law school. So, which is actually a lot of agents are licensed attorneys, so they have passed the bar, but it's not an NFLPA requirement.
Yep. So you are the third NFL agent that has been on the Draft Professor podcast. All three of you are attorneys. So what you said doesn't surprise me, but I do find that interesting that seems to be a common path in. And I'm assuming the contractual language of an NFL contract, your legal background probably gives you an edge there.
1000%. So yeah, it was one of those things that honestly, even going into law school, I didn't know how much overlap there would be. Obviously, like you said, contract law, being able to understand, reading through different clauses, things like that, that's all extremely beneficial. But yeah, I didn't realize the magnitude of the overlap until I really got certified. I started reading through some, obviously, NFL contracts, the player agreements, different things like that. But it's a tremendous help, I'll say.
Cool. Brian, you want to take a turn here?
Oh, I got plenty of questions here. So just kind of going with the, becoming an agent and that stuff. So obviously you said you had to have your law degree or what have you. Besides that, what is the process of becoming an agent?
Yep. So my timelines might be a little off, but when I went through the process, you have to apply around January, February, and then from there they need to accept you. Like I said, the requirements to apply: after your undergrad, you need either a law degree or a master's of some sort. If you don't have that, you could get away with 7 years of negotiating experience in a related type of market. So I know actually one of my close friends that I'm working with, he's kind of getting those 7 years through CFL negotiating experience. But once you have those, either one of the two, then you apply. You have to pay the deposit, pay the fees, everything like that. Once you get accepted, there is for me, it was a 3-day seminar, but I was kind of the COVID class. So things I guess I wasn't the COVID class, but there was still a lot of COVID restrictions going on. So for me, it was entirely virtual. I'm not sure what it looks like now, but it was a 3-day seminar just going over the CBA, making sure that we understand what's going to be on the exam. And then after the 3-day seminar, there is an exam. You have to pass it. Has a pretty tough passing rate. I want to say it was something like 50% of everyone who takes it passes. So it is a pretty difficult exam, but from there, you get, you pass, you get accepted, everything's good. Then it's just paying your dues, and you are officially licensed.
Is it like a yearly thing you have to pay dues, or?
It is definitely a yearly thing. So I'll say, once again, anyone out there who's looking to become an agent, it is a very high barrier to entry from a cost perspective. You're paying. So I'm out of Canada. I'm not sure how much you guys know. Our dollar is pretty bad compared to the U.S. right now. So you're probably looking at, for dues and insurance, about between $4,000 and $4,500 a year. So that's just something to be ready for.
In Canadian, right?
Canadian dollars, yes.
So that's probably, it's more. That's probably
it's like $2 American.
48. It's like maybe 48, something like that in American dollars, 4,800, something like that.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've spent a little bit of time at the University of Toronto. Mine was entirely as a guest, and that's not what the subject of this podcast is. But our going joke, and this was even 30 years ago, is that something's like $1,000 Canadian. It's like what, $2 American.
I'm hoping it'll get a little better now, but I'm not too hopeful on that front.
So Jamal, are you located out of Canada now, or have you moved to the States?
Yep, no. So I'm actually completely out of Canada. So I'm out of Toronto. Been there, kind of born and raised. Funny enough, I did a bit of school in the States though. So I went to high school. I did 2 years in Buffalo and 2 years in a small town in Connecticut called Windsor, which is about 15 minutes from Hartford.
I'm intimately familiar with both of those locations. I'm a huge Bills fan, and I've spent some time. You said, was it Windsor, Connecticut?
Windsor, Connecticut, yes, sir.
Oh, I was thinking maybe Groton. I got my Connecticut's not that big, but I got my locations mixed up.
No, it's all good. And honestly, you say it's not that big. I didn't spend too much time outside of campus when I was there. So,
okay, cool. So, from a client perspective, are you trying to focus on Canadian players or?
Yeah, so that was definitely, like, when I started up, that was the number one thing. I wanted to represent only Canadian players because I'm sure, as you guys are seeing now, there's been an uptick. A lot more Canadians are going to play NCAA ball. There's more and more getting drafted each year or signing as UDFAs every year. But being honest, I was quickly faced with the reality check that the market just isn't there to only represent Canadians. So I definitely recruit everybody, but I have where it's possible, I do try to give preference to Canadians.
So, Brian, does your great database have a toggle where you can just say, here's the players from Canada?
Not a toggle, but I do notate players who are from outside of the U.S. So, like, if they're from Canada or they're from, like, say, Ghana or something like that, I do have notations in there about that.
Cool. So Jamal, one of the things that makes Brian a very special draft professor is that Brian has a database, and he can tell us about players that are like freshmen and sophomores, and he has a lot of data on them, which would include who's from Canada. Is some of the tidbits of information he drops to the other draft professors. So he's a good person to know if you're trying to make sure that you know every player that would be in Canada, let's say in the next 2 or 3 draft cycles. Brian probably
good. Brian,
well,
I might have to tap in with you a little bit.
What's that?
I might have to tap in with you for that database, kind of, update you on some of the Canadians that we got going on. There's been a lot actually. Like, there's a big pipeline. So now more and more each year, Canadians are actually doing prep and like even before getting to the NCAA. So I'm pretty sure actually out of Tennessee, the number 1 player in Tennessee is a Canadian right now. I could be wrong.
In Tennessee high school or Tennessee
high school? Yeah, sorry. So he's at the Baylor School in Tennessee, but I'm pretty sure he's the number 1 player out of all of Tennessee high school.
Okay. Yeah, because when I do my database and I do my research on players, I always check to see where like they're from, because always something I always find interesting to track. So yeah. I've been seeing a lot more Canadian players. There's always players you see from some African countries, like I said, like Ghana and Somalia, and so you still see those players. Those are the 2 big areas you see. There's been a little bit of an uptick I've noticed from Germany. That's kind of interesting. I've seen an uptick from like Germany and stuff like that too.
And then you get the punters and kickers out of Australia or New Zealand.
Yeah, there you go. Australia, New Zealand too. Yeah.
And then every year, right before the draft, one of the people in our community does a draft a team event where it's like 20 people, each fielding a team of 22, starting 11 offense and defense. They give an award to the highest drafted Canadian player. So like, it just as we're going through this exercise where we're going to be picking close to 500 players, first person to draft a Canadian player gets it's a prize. It's all ego. There's no financial gain to it, but they always mention, like, I got Alec Eilman a couple years ago. Actually, that would have been last year. And he's a Canadian. So
no, I love to hear that. So anytime, I guess that award, there's a special award coming from me for whoever drafts a Canadian first. So
there you go. So Jamal, one of the questions that I like asking agents is, how do you determine as an agent if the player is good enough to be under consideration for the NFL draft?
It's tough, honestly. Really and truthfully. So kind of going into my process. So we put together a database. It's myself and about 3 others that work at Empowered, and it's a lot of film study. So we try to do our own film study, put together our big board, of course. But then from there, we have a pretty good connection of scouts on kind of from everywhere. So CFL scouts, NFL scouts, as well as some of the big bowl games. So we just tap in with our connections and try to get a feel for what the scouts are saying, if they're, if things align, and going from there. And then just keeping that line of communication open, especially now that the season's finally here, it's finally back. It's a bit easier. There's actually games going on. You could kind of stay updated in real time. Like, okay, what are your thoughts on this game? That type of deal. But it really is just a lot of our own film study and then just reaching out to as many people as we can and trying to understand what their sense is on the player.
Okay. Brian, you have anything for Jamal?
Yeah. So obviously this is a big thing that's been going on last few years. And of course it seems like it's changing every year, every few months, whatever crazy stuff going on. But as far as like NIL and the transfer portal, how has that affected you guys and your company as far as agents, as far as like recruiting players and keeping track of them and just everything that goes along with that as far as being an agent?
Yep. So it's definitely changed things. I'll say it's a little different because we kind of came in with the whole NIL surge. So I believe like when the first settlement that allowed players to benefit from their own name, image, and likeness, I believe that was 2021. So that was actually before we officially opened as an agency. So we've been kind of following along and been there for the journey along with everyone else. But it's definitely been a lot tougher. Agents, representatives, NIL agents, NFL agents, they're in contact with these guys a lot earlier than they were allowed to be before, just from a strictly NIL perspective. So like there's been people I've reached out to that are freshmen. There's been a couple that are in high school and they've already signed with an agent. Yes, granted, it can't be for NFL professional contracts, but it is for NIL related activities, and that way, obviously, you're allowed to transition that into professional representation later down the line. So it's been difficult kind of understanding that perspective. From us as an agency, we tried to stay away from NIL as much as possible just because we didn't understand the landscape enough, just being real. And then learned it more. And especially, I guess, early on when we wanted to work with Canadians. So that was a huge issue. Not sure how familiar you guys are with it, but on the F1 visas that international students are on, you can't work. With NIL, that was a huge issue. For me, I never wanted to jeopardize anybody's visa. Like you're there, you're playing ball. Like that's what you're trying to use that to, get your education, eventually feed your family. Don't want to play around with that at all. So it was understanding that a little more before we felt comfortable getting into that landscape. And I'll say even now, we're not completely emerged. Getting a bit more into the transfer portal space now. And that's something really and truthfully that started this summer, continuing into this fall. But it's definitely been different, but it's also, there's so many positives that come out of it. Like I said before, whereas the competition, yeah, they're getting on guys earlier. It's also a great way for us to get in contact with guys, to start building that relationship, start building that trust with players a lot sooner, a lot earlier. The more exposure they have to us, as well as their families, the more they'll be able to trust us when it comes down to professional relationships. So it's definitely something we try to use. We try to leverage these NIL type relationships, these transfer portal type of relationships to transition into professional relationships in the future.
So I guess from an NIL standpoint, my understanding is that's less regulated than being an NFL agent.
It's the Wild West out there.
And you are that's almost the exact quote that I heard from one of your colleagues that's been on the podcast before. So several things pop into my head. One would be, do you think the NC2A players unionize to give the players, right? Because like the commissions on an NIL deal, I heard could be 25%. Whereas I believe the NFL, the max is either 2 or 3%.
3% is typically the max. And if you're talking a top 3 round pick, it's usually under that 2% range, being honest. So it's definitely vast different. Granted, NFL contracts you are unless you're a top quarterback in the NCAA, you are usually making more than you would from that NIL deal. But yeah, I haven't heard as high as 25, but I definitely heard a couple 20%ers, which is a ridiculous commission.
It's crazy.
And, yeah, something that really truthfully I don't like that. I think it's a little exploitative, especially the work that the agent is putting in compared to what they're getting. I don't think it matches up at all. But it's a business at the end of the day. If that's going to be your business model and it works, the players and their families are willing to sign off on it, who am I to say no? But it's that high of a commission is something I'm personally against.
So if you had to give some advice in this regard to a high school player that's being contacted for NIL representation, what are some of the questions that you think the players should be asking the agents that would be representing them in NIL?
Definitely the first one, who have you represented? Granted, just because you have experience doing it or you have a client base doesn't mean you're good at it. And just because you don't doesn't mean you're not good at it. But that, I think that should be the number one, just to get an idea, get a sense of who they are, what they've done. And if you can get their client list, reach out to them, really and truthfully. Reach out to the clients, understand who is this person that you're working with. Does the player like them? So that would be the number one thing. Number two, really understanding what they're going to do for you as a player. Like, what's your everyday look like? How are you going to help me go about getting these deals? If it's transfer portal related, how are you going to help me navigate the portal? I would definitely, recommend that. And then, I guess before anything else, certifications. Even though, like I said, it is the Wild Wild West, you do technically still need to be certified to work with NIL transfer portal on a state-by-state basis. So it is a requirement. It's almost never enforced, but if you want to be by the books, that's definitely something I would advise any player to ask about and understand how genuine the agents be. If they're trying to skirt around the question, then maybe that is something you need to take into consideration. Maybe they're not as transparent as you would like them to be, especially if they're going to be asking for 15-20% of your NIL related engagements. Like, that's you just want to make sure that there is a very transparent, open book, and you have you're able to trust them. And if they're hiding anything from you, you want to at least get a sense of, maybe they are a little shady. So those three, I would definitely say, any players going through that process, ask those questions.
And then what do you think about college football players unionizing? Do you think if there's agents who are getting a 20% cut of that NIL money, do you think the NC2A has an interest to regulate that? Or do you think the NC2A has bigger problems and this isn't going to be on their list of things to solve?
I think it's definitely in their best interest to regulate it, because it's in the player's best interest as well. But the scale of it, I'm not sure how that would work. I think it would have to be like on a Power 4 conference type of level where they separate. Maybe it's not even called the NCAA anymore. It's something completely different. But they separate, and those players can unionize versus the rest of the NCAA kind of operating as it has been or under a different entity, just because when you're looking at the revenue generated, when you're looking at the profit margins, there is a bit of a bigger jump off from Power 4 schools versus the rest of the NCAA. But I say that a little cheek and tongue because with the NCAA, they don't necessarily always do what you think is going to be the logical or the most rational decision. So
this is true.
Yes, you put that a lot more eloquently than me, but no, I do like that response. I don't think that's talked about enough.
Yeah,
how the NC2A's relationship with their players feels way more fragmented than the NFL's relationship with their players. And I'm not saying the NFL has a great relationship with their players. I'm just saying what college has with its players is not as good.
But no, you're absolutely right. And with that, like, once again, this is all just me following along, understanding. I think the NCAA just took way too long to acknowledge guys as athletes. They were in denial for too long. They didn't put any parameters together for when what everyone else saw as the inevitable was going to happen. And that's why we're in this situation we're in right now.
Ooh, so we have a question that came in from Hurricane Lane. Thank you for stopping by. So I'm reading the question here.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I could definitely jump in there. I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. To what extent, I think we're still a bit in the dark. From my understanding, kind of towards the end of the year, we're going to get a lot more clarity on the actual settlement and what that's going to mean, especially for collectives and schools being able to pay players directly. What that's going to mean from a recruiting perspective is going to be a huge thing. But I definitely think that is the step in the right direction, and it should provide a bit of clarity as to what the NCAA even wants to do about the I guess the NIL stuff that's going on.
So Brian, you have any more questions for Jamal?
No, I got plenty. So kind of in regards to that last question, in a way, it kind of leads into the question I had. So have you guys got any what am I looking for? Like information or anything as far as you guys know what's going on or what's coming up as far as what's that's supposed to be changing is the revenue sharing type of stuff that's supposed to be going on with NIL and college players, stuff like that. And any sort of I guess like information you guys gotten or anything that's going to be changing with that or
no, fair question. So I wish I could be a bit more of the inside scoop there. I'm not completely, but from my understanding, is like the revenue sharing, it was an opt-in, opt-out basis. Obviously, majority of FBS schools, if not all, did end up opting in. On the FCS levels, where you're seeing a bit of schools starting to opt out for one reason or another. So what that's going to look like in terms of a competitive standpoint, once again, going to the recruitment cycle, what players' decision making is going to be interesting to follow along with for the next couple of years. But that's definitely one big change. And then the other big change is going to be around, I think, the collectives. So collectives, from my understanding, they're still going to be able to pay players, which is going to be a bit weird. I'm not sure how much the settlement is going to actually help, because the sense I'm getting is, yes, there's going to be a salary cap, and schools have a set spend, but when it comes to the collective, the cap or the spend, it doesn't relate to that at all. So at the end of the day, schools with the biggest donors, the deepest pockets, I think, are still going to be able to spend a virtually unlimited amount of money. I'm curious to see how much, if at all, the NCAA factors that into their decision making and into setting some type of rules, some type of regulations. But yeah, I guess the hope is that there's going to be a cap, so everyone's not spending, $50+ million on NIL. But I don't know how much of that is going to be the actual reality.
Another question is coming in from Steve.
Yep, I did think this one was coming. So no worries. I expected this one a little bit. So what should change? Oh, okay. I think.
And then he had a tail there, so apparently Steve fat fingered the enter key.
Oh, fiduciary duty to its members. Got you. Okay. That's a tough one. I think I'm gonna get back to that one. Sorry, Steve. I'm not forgetting about you. I'm keeping that in the back of my mind for a little bit.
You gotta think long hard about that one.
Yeah, no, because there's definitely some changes that need to be made. I think, really truthfully, from what I've read, what I've understood, is the hiring process of, not saying any names, but what went down with the former director, that was a bit of concern. And we've been getting a bit of communication back and forth from the Players Association to give us some more transparency now, but it doesn't help after the fact. So I definitely think being more transparent at the beginning, at the onset, and keeping everybody in the loop is a way for change. But at the same time, I don't think that's enough. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. But like I said, I'm still thinking on that one.
So there's a question that I have percolating. Brian, do you have another question so I can think through my question before I actually say it out loud without fumbling?
Like I said, I got tons of questions, so we're good. Okay, so kind of going back to some of the earlier stuff we were talking about, as far as you being based out of Canada, are there any plans, though, for you guys to open up shop in the United States or move there, or hire an agent in the United States so you have agents in both countries, or any plans there?
Yeah, so that actually is the plan. It's just for me working out the logistics of that. But ideally, I would love to move to Texas. Obviously, being the hot spot, the hub for all things football, would be a great place to be. But I'm not obviously only limiting myself to Texas, but just from a logistics standpoint, getting from Canada to games is it's a little troublesome, it's a little difficult at times. So, and definitely like I said, I'm out of Toronto. I don't know the exact numbers on it, but we're one of the most expensive airports to fly into or fly out of in North America. So it's from my pocket standpoint, I'm sure they'd love if I did move to the States. But yeah, no, it's definitely something I'm looking into, and I would love to have happen in the next few years. But it's just what that will look like, I'm not entirely sure yet. And in terms of hiring another agent that is actually from the States, so one of my coworkers I work with at Empowered, he's actually based out of Buffalo. So I met him when I was going to school in Buffalo. So we do have a bit of that liaison, and I'm looking towards figuring out a few different ways we could get that sort of liaison. But where I've also kind of found success with that is making relationships with the trainers and the training facilities. So on that side of things, I have good relationships with a trainer out of Atlanta, a trainer out of San Antonio. We sent one of our guys to Grizzetti Performance, so that's just outside of Pittsburgh. So I'm starting to make those relationships, those connections a little more to try to build a bit of that hub, because as I'm sure everyone listening knows, being in the United States will make it so much easier from a recruitment, from a getting out to games, meeting families from that perspective. So I'm trying to make that as smooth, as easy as possible.
No, and I just
California is also a big club too.
I want to chime in. The people in Buffalo usually say flying out of Toronto is cheaper than Buffalo.
I have not found that. As I've been putting together my calendar for this upcoming season, a lot of my trips I've been looking at flying out of Buffalo. So I don't know where they got the information from, but what I'm seeing, it's not cheaper.
It's hysterical. So I'm from that area. I am from Western New York, right?
Okay.
Born in Cheektowaga, raised in Rochester, not that far.
Okay.
But whenever I've flown back to home, it always asks me, would you like to fly into Toronto instead? And then drive to Buffalo.
Yeah.
So it's funny how you and I see that, but it's completely opposite. It is. That's hysterical.
No, it is for sure. I think where that may come into play a little bit is because Buffalo doesn't have, or they don't fly everywhere kind of every day. So Toronto will be more accessible, whereas you could get those flights a little easier than getting a flight.
Yes.
You always move to California because we have LAX here, which has flights everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm barely getting over the traffic in Toronto, so I don't know if LA traffic will be any better for me.
Hey, I'm in California. We have a bunch of airports, man. We got Orange County, we got Long Beach, we got Ontario, we got a bunch of airports, so you're good.
Okay, no, hey, that honestly, I'm looking into any and everything. So any recommendations, let me know.
Hey, like I said, I'm in California, man. So if you move out here, dude, hit me up. I'll show you around. I'll tell you what to do and where to go.
Okay, no, that sounds good. Definitely will. Hopefully I can make a trip there soon. So if I do, I'll definitely reach out and we can meet in person.
Yeah, for sure. Hit me up.
So, Jamal, when a player finishes their college season, and I'm using that term vaguely, finishes their college season, at what point are they truly training for the draft? Can you kind of take us through, are they starting November, December, or that usually doesn't happen until January? Can you take us through how a player is going to transition from playing college football to prepping for the draft?
Yep. So from my experience, it's definitely that first week of January is when I think things really start to go. But I say that knowing that teams, strength and conditioning coaches, all of the sorts are giving players things to do in that kind of free time, because there is about a month or so, depending on when the season ended, depending on if there's a bowl game or not, where players do have a good amount of free time. But it's tough because that's also when it's holiday time, right? So if they don't have games, players will be back home. So you can't put them on as strict of a, draft training regimen, just because they're going to want to spend that time with their family. They're not going to see them after that for the next 4 or 5 months, give or take. So typically that first week of January is when I would say things really start. And then, from there, it doesn't slow down until the NFL season's over, really.
So, Brian, what else do you have?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so this actually goes back to something else you mentioned before earlier. You said you have like a database where it's like 3 of you guys working together on it.
Yep.
So do you have like assistants that help you, and do they do other stuff besides that, like recruiting, or do they just like take like calls for you, or just like whatever? Like how many people, basically, another way to put it, like how many people do you guys have working for you? What are the processes of what they do, and how does it work? And
100%. Yeah. So we have so myself and there's 3 others that work with us. So team of 4 total. What that looks like. So we have bi-weekly, sometimes weekly calls, depending on how busy things are, where we just keep each other updated on what's going on. So how we've kind of separated it as much as we can, we have a few different databases. So we have one database that's like, for example, NFL caliber players. We'll have another database that's players that are in Canada, and obviously from that more so CFL players. And then we have the high school. Well, we're working on the high school database, not there yet, but we also have a transfer portal database. So that's typically players from lower tier schools. So you're thinking group of 5 FCS players that are underclassmen. So we put them on that database and just trying to go through, work through a lot of their film, as I mentioned before. So that was the majority of kind of winter, spring, fall, or winter, spring, summer, leading up until now, getting through as much of that film as we can. And then from there, putting together the big board, understanding, making a ranking system. But then what other things that we do as we reach out to different players, because I'm sorry, I don't mean to correct you in that way, but I don't like to say kind of people working under me or anything like that. Like I let all of them know we're on pretty even ground. Yeah, I'm NFL certified, but we're all working together. We all kind of have a common goal. And the people that I'm working with as well, even though not all of them are NFL certified, they're working towards doing that. So for me, it's just trying to help them gain as much experience as they can. I know when I came onto the scene, I had one internship with an agency that's no longer around, but outside of that, it's tough to get a bit of the guidance, to get some of the field work and understanding that side of things. So for me, when I opened the agency and I knew that, okay, there are things that I could use help with, I wanted to kind of, sorry for a little bit of the pun here, but I wanted to empower the guys I'm working with to do as much as they can as possible, to be out there, be in the field, because for me the best way to learn is through that experience. So really truthfully, they like everything that I'm out there doing, they're doing as well. So they're on there with the pitches, doing the pitches with me if they can make it. They're out there reaching out to players on both on my behalf but on their own as well. They're doing all that. They're watching the film, they're watching the games. So it's really just kind of more of a conglomerate, like a group of like-minded individuals. We all have the goal. We want to be agents, and we're just working together.
Gotcha.
So if you're looking for a high school database, there are 2 people at Draft Professor that run an organization called Home Squad Sports, which is entirely high school recruiting.
Okay, that's great to know. I'm taking note of that as we speak. Home Squad Sports was?
Home Squad Sports. So it's Daniel and Dalton. They both podcast on Mondays.
Okay.
So if you happen to turn this station on at this time tomorrow, you're going to see one of them. They don't podcast at the same time. One's on at 7, one's on at 9. But you'll be able to see the 2-headed monster that is Home Squad Sports.
No, that's great to know. Literally, I'll send a text over to the team to let them know Home Squad Sports is where we need to be at. So I appreciate that for sure. Thank you, Jim.
And then there's Brian, and like Brian, I assume that your database starts when somebody enters college and has played a game as a freshman.
Basically, yes. I don't like putting guys in there who are coming in because it's just, you never know. Like, you get these 5-star kids that bust, but then you get these 2-star kids that blow up, and it's too much work for me. At least I want to at least see some film of them. So yeah, I like 99% of the time I won't put a kid in there unless he's played some college football. Unless I have some film to watch on to go on. Like, okay, yeah, like I can see how we can do it or how we can get better or how we can get to the NFL or what have you.
That makes sense.
When you go to Draft Professor and you go to our site, right? So right now that list is like 650 players long. And that's because I say, okay, like Florida State's playing Alabama. Here's my list. And then Brian will say, well, you're missing these two, and you're missing, somebody's going to say you're missing this player. And I'm like, okay, are the guys that you're having me add worthy of covering on a podcast to where somebody's going to select them in a mock draft? Right. So like that 650 player list we have at Draft Professor will get whittled down. And I assume that within 6 weeks, we start chopping off about 100 players a week. As we're starting to say, okay, we're confident those players aren't going to be drafted, and trying to get the simulator down to about 320 players or so. So, like, Brian will maintain a database that'll have even the guys that don't make the NFL and go to Canada, which might be something that you would enter, right? So, like here at Draft Professor, we have all different people that are at like different life cycles. Like Home Squad Sports goes from college recruiting to the NFL draft. But once the player's drafted, they don't even really do too much NFL coverage. So just we're a group of people that are just loosely held together by a podcast. But good connections.
No, that's a great way to put it. I love that.
So Brian, what else do you have?
With that, if you don't mind, Brian, I have a question for you. So on that, I'm curious, like with your database, how you factor into Group of 5 FCS players, because with the transfer portal now, you're seeing so many guys have a lot of early success at those levels and then move
transfer up.
Yep.
Yeah, it's tough. It's gotten harder for sure the last couple of years, I think. Like I still maintain it. Like I got tabs. It's basically a spreadsheet, but I basically have tabs for each conference.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And so yeah, it's just each conference and each team, and then I got the players in there. And then if a player transfers, I just move them over to the other school. But yeah, like if you look at the conference tabs for those Group of 5 schools, the list of guys that are like it's like that. You know, in your Group of 5 and your Power 5, it's like that. Because they're you get a good guy, he blows up, and then he transfers the next offseason. It's like, yeah, there's not too many guys in there. It's like I said, yeah, it's hard because, and plus you got the winter portal and the spring portal, and guys double transfer, and so like the guy transferred to this school and they transfer to another school, like a few months later, and like tracking that is. It's tough, but it's kind of fun though in a way.
So we have had people that have done some research, Jamal, and I'm curious where it stands with you. But players that played for 3 schools, they don't get drafted as high as you'd think. Do you do any type of research in that regard?
So not specifically to say that, if you've gone to 3 schools, you're off of my board, but I do pay attention to it closely. Like if you are moving around a lot, like there's a couple of players that to be frank, I've taken off my board because you're at 4 schools in 4 years. I think there is some, there's a bit of credit that a player gets for one, going through the process. Just because you're not playing doesn't mean it's not the right fit or the right place for you. Especially early on, those first 2 or so years. Like I always say when I'm thinking it through, after that redshirt sophomore year, or I'll say redshirt freshman year, if you have no anticipation of touching the field, let's say that after that spring, like you're not seeing reps with the 1s or 2s, okay, it makes sense to transfer away from that at that point. But guys are transferring now because they didn't see the field as a freshman. I think that's a little ridiculous, to be honest. I think there is a lot of a process with college football specifically. One, your body takes, like you need to get your body ready to play at that level. But 2, just the volume, the amount of players that are on the team, not to mention, players that are not with the travel roster, things like that. Like there's a lot of competition out there. And as 18, 19-year-old, you're going up against 23, 24-year-old grown men. You got to give yourself a bit more credit. You got to give the players you're going against a bit more credit in terms of they could just be good players and they're better than you right now, versus saying this isn't, I'm not playing, I got to get out of here. So I'm not a huge fan of, the multiple transfers, but it's a very case by case, very circumstantial type of thing. So if I could understand, and I actually talk to people that have transferred a few times, I try to understand, okay, what made you transfer, like what made you decide where you're going to, which helps me in my recruiting process and my understanding of, okay, maybe it was just a different fit. With the turnover of coaches, a lot of the times it's just their entire staff got fired, or the coach that recruited them, their offensive, defensive coordinator, whatever the case may be, they're gone. And then the new staff, at kind of how that works, the new staff is going to bring in all their own guys, right? So you want to make sure as a player you're giving yourself a fair shot as well. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge fan of people who transfer just because of playing time, but I do give grace if there's a valid reason for it.
Yeah. So Brian, what else do you have?
Yeah, actually, I actually have a question kind of going off of that a little bit. Is besides kind of that type of stuff, is there other stuff that either personality or off field or whatever type of things that come up about a player that makes you take them off your board, or makes you decide like, nah, I'm not sure about this kid. I'm not sure if I want to recruit him. I'm not sure if I want him with my agency, for whatever the reason is. Is there anything that makes you take them off your board, so to speak?
Yeah, so this is actually something that changed from last year to now. But obviously being a smaller, newer agency, a lot of guys kind of overlook us. So for me, it just became a straight respect thing. If I'm going out of my way, I'm reaching out, I'm quote unquote showing love, and you're just straight up like, guys will ignore for kind of months on end, and then later down the line try to reach back out, because for whatever case, or whatever the case is, they haven't gotten the interest that they thought they deserved or they thought they should have been getting. So that's definitely a big red flag for us, because the way we operate the agency here, it's very, very relationship based. Kind of my fundamentals, I think that you need to be a relationship based person as an agent, and as a player, like, you want to have somebody that you can, going back to the trust aspect of it, you want to have someone you could trust, and that truly starts from the relationship aspect. So people don't show the respect to at least go about trying to develop a relationship, or if they think they're better than the agency or better than me. I don't take offense to it, just because I get it. That's how it is. If you believe you should be rep by a bigger agency, so be it. But I just think, have the decency to say that. I'm not going to take offense to it. It is what it is. And then if that's the case, and you try to come back months down the line because you haven't gotten the interest that you thought you deserved, like, that's, I'm not petty. Like, I don't hold grudges, but that is almost a bridge burned, just because you weren't doing your due diligence. You weren't being respectful as a person. I try to be big on respect. So if I'm seeing a pattern of disrespect, then you'll probably be off my board.
Good to know.
Any more, Brian?
Let me look at my questions here. I think some you kind of already answered. Talk about that. Okay, so when you are talking to a player, or even a player decides to sign with you or what have you, do you have like very like frank discussions with them as far as where you see them going, or potentially going with an NFL, or do you say, oh, well, you know what, I really don't think you're quote unquote good enough for the NFL. I think you're a CFL player, or this is the things I think you need to work on. If you work on these things, I think maybe you'll have an NFL shot, but if you don't, you won't, type of thing. Or like, like I said, are you very frank with them, like when you talk to these players?
Yeah, so we definitely try to be as transparent as possible. But it's a tight line that we walk there. And just because there's our opinions as, the agency, and then there's kind of the NFL world, the scouts, the GMs, the decision makers in the NFL that have their opinions. So we early on, we definitely we let them know, we wouldn't be recruiting if we didn't think you had NFL talent. And that's like very early on. Once they sign and, we've had months, the full season, full career worth of film, we've been having our conversations with different scouts from the NFL, the bowl games, CFL, whatever the case may be, then that's when we go on. And I try to be as frank, as open as possible. I don't know if anybody that works with me at Empowered is listening, but they say a little bit that I'm a bit too forthcoming at times, whereas it might come off a bit mean, but I just try to set expectations as much as possible. So yeah, I definitely let them know, this is what the scouts are saying. This is, where the scouts believe that you can improve, get better. And based off of that, this is where I believe that, you'll go. And then I guess also being frank with you guys, we've actually only had one player for NFL representation at this point in the agency. So at least all of my experience that I'm talking about right now is based off of that one player. But it's definitely something that we strive to do, and we do it as much as we can.
Do you mind telling us who that player is?
They didn't make the NFL. And to be honest, because of that, the relationship actually soured. So we were trying to get them some CFL opportunities. We were trying to get them some UFL opportunities, and then they weren't very happy with what we were doing as an agency. So just, out of respect for them, I'm not going to say the name.
No worries. Gotcha.
So Jamal, Lilia in the chat. So Lilia, it's good to see you. I see Lilia frequently because I saw her right before the podcast. So that is my significant other. She did some digging on your Wiki page. So tell us about Wiki says citation needed, but were you in a movie?
Not to my knowledge.
No, it's on the Wiki page that you're an actor.
I definitely didn't get paid for it if I was.
So I'm looking at your Wiki page.
Sorry,
and it says he's an actor in Vancouver, British Columbia.
I've never been to Vancouver a day in my life, actually. I need to get out there. It's beautiful. It's very beautiful. I don't know who got that in there, but that is not me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you should. Me and my family, we vacationed there twice. It's really nice.
Yeah, no, very nice. I actually have a few friends and family there. I keep telling them I gotta go. So
yeah, maybe super nice.
In the next couple of years, I'll make the trip.
And it's actually very possible that the Jamal Johnson on the Wiki page, I'm noticing that they have a second L on their name. So you either match the profile of a former NFL player with the same name, or anyways. So
no, funny enough, there's a lot of Jamal Johnsons and a lot of Jamal Johnsons that played football out there. There was one point I remember when I was going through high school, there was a player, I think he played for the CFL, but named Jamal Johnson. So
yeah, and I'm looking in this one. Yeah, I can just tell from where it said that you were born, because this is a birth location in the United States.
Must be different. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, maybe. But it's funny because that person played in the CFL. That's actually kind of the funny thing.
That could be the one I'm thinking about, to be honest.
So, anyways. Jamal, do you have any questions for us as draft professors or for Brian with his lovely database?
Honestly, I guess no specifics, but as draft professors, I'm curious, what got you guys into this journey? I guess is the biggest question I would have.
You want to go, Jim, or you want me to go? Okay.
So what got me into this is I've been a fan of the NFL draft since I was a kid. And then one day I got an idea to design a draft simulator. And then it turns out the best way to advertise your draft simulator is to create a podcast.
Yep.
And then here I am, and I have met great people like both of you along the lines, just as I've gone through. So draft professors, we have like a legendary group chat with like 89 of us. And then 24 of those 89 show up once a week to a podcast kind of thing. So that just kind of keeps the channel moving. But that's kind of how I'm here. Brian, how'd you get here?
Oh man, it's a long story, long journey. So yeah, basically, let me think all the way back to the beginning. So yeah, I played football in high school, and then I graduated, and then obviously it wasn't that good. Kind of stopped playing too at the very end of high school too, but just like was interested in the draft. Started reading like the draft guides that came out back in the early 2000s, like those draft guides. You have to actually had to go to the bookstore to buy them and stuff like that. So started getting into that, like I said, and then I decided watching film. Just like at the time, film was like basically impossible to get. You had to basically watch TV copy. So this is how old I am, how long I've been around. So yeah, I basically did that, and then I actually got into. I actually met, well, not met physically, but at least met online. Matt Miller, if you probably know who that is. So I started working with him for a little bit. Me and a friend. We had a website that's no longer around, so we started doing that, and then I kind of got away from because I had other not family really per se, but like just life stuff going on, so I couldn't really do it as much as like I did. So I kind of got out for some years, and then got back into it again. Was able to get film, talk, can make some connections with people. So now I'm able to get like, NFS grades and all that type of stuff, and to start again writing, doing articles first, and then doing film breakdowns. I've done some draft guide work. Just posting clips and just doing what I'm doing now, basically.
No, fair enough. I appreciate that. And it's always crazy because football is one of those things. Like, I think it's the biggest connector. Like, there's so many people, we all come from different walks of life, but through football, like, everyone kind of gets joined, connected, whatever the case may be. So I'm always curious what different people's route to football is.
Well, and ultimately part of my theme for the podcast is to do as much connecting as possible, right? Like, I love the fact that you came on, just for a 1 hour conversation. We could do this again, like later on in the spring when we start talking about like contracts being renegotiated and getting an agent's perspective and things like that. But Jamal, do you want to let everybody know who you are, and if a player sees this podcast, how can they get in touch with you? Feel free to use this to kind of plug yourself and your agency.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Actually, I appreciate that. So everyone, Jamal Johnson, out of Toronto, NFL agent, working at Empowered Sports Manager, also the co-founder there. If you do see this, you're a player, a player, whatever the case may be, you can reach out to me through Instagram. So either at Empowered, spelled EMPWRD, Sports on Instagram, or at JT Johnson, at _ JT Johnson on Instagram. My name's a bit too common. I had to try to figure out creative ways to get the name out there. And then you can also find me on Twitter at JT Johnson __.
Okay. Brian, do you want to let everybody know about all the things that you do?
Yeah, of course. As you can see my Twitter handle, if anybody's watching, anybody's listening, just at BMafia NFL. I post clips. I just started a Substack, so I'm going to be writing up articles there. I just put out my quarterback, running back, and my wide receiver early rankings. I'll obviously do my other business tight ends, O-line, D-line, all that stuff. I'll be putting those up. Starting next Sunday, probably next Sunday, I'll do my weekly like college kind of breakdown, what happened the week in college football, like storylines, players who had big games. I'll try and find some players that maybe had a big game but didn't get really noticed nationally. Maybe they're playing at a smaller school or whatever, or just didn't get noticed by the big ESPN and NFL Network, Fox News, whatever. I'll be doing those, and then of course, obviously here every Sunday, and then I'll have video breakdowns on my Twitter. I'll put those up. Anything else? Mostly that's about it.
And if you are new to Draft Professor, thank you for stopping by and watching. We are here every night. Not all of our guests will be as popular as Jamal or as unique as Jamal. Jamal, this has been awesome having you on.
Oh, it's been great. I really appreciate the you guys giving me the platform.
Oh, you are welcome. So you can follow the station at NFL Draft Fanatic. There we are, right there. No, I am Fanatic. It's the same on X and YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube and you can hit that subscribe, please and thank you. That is the single best thank you can give, is to subscribe on YouTube. This podcast is also on Spotify, so once the recording finishes, I'll have this uploaded to Spotify probably tomorrow night. Daily draft content starting next week, 2 podcasts every day from now until April, 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern, going right up to the draft Monday through Friday. We have a Saturday morning show. Brian will have a Sunday podcast during the NFL season. You're probably going to see it really late at night. And then February 15th, the Sunday after the Super Bowl, we're back at 8 p.m. Eastern with Brian and myself live. And Brian and I don't know what we're doing February 15th, but I'm sure he and I will talk a few times between now and then. But that being said, for the 89 podcasters at the Draft Professor, for Brian Maffei, special guest, agent Jamal Johnson, thank you so much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you on a podcast again tomorrow night.